From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. In today's show, Mark sits in on Senator Chuck Grassley's weekly Ag Conference call. I visit with U.S. Meat Export Federation President and CEO Dan Halstrom, and Dustin discusses E15 with Renewable Fuels Association Director of Government Affairs Jared Mullendore, while he is out at Washington Watch in Washington, D.C. I'm Riley Smith, one of your hosts for today, and joining me now is Mark Magnuson. Mark, the temperatures have cooled off a bit. I think Mother Nature turned the AC up a little too far.
Yes, here we go again on the roller coaster, Riley. We'll have a warm day followed by a cold day. It seems like this spring has kind of been the theme. We've had some high winds on these colder days, which makes it feel even colder. And here today, hopefully that chance to at least dry out a little bit, as it doesn't look like we have much in the way of moisture in the forecast. And speaking of drying out, getting a chance to get some planning done over the last week, we had the latest planning progress and crop condition report from the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship that was released yesterday. We had 2 days more for field work last week, 4.3 days suitable for field work. That was 2 days more than last year. The topsoil moisture condition rated 2% very short, 8% short, 76% adequate, 14% surplus. And planning for corn in Iowa reached 22% complete. That's 10% behind last year when 32% of the crop had been planted. Soybean planting reached 11%. That's 12% behind 2025 when 23% of the crop had been planted. And so you hear those numbers, you say, hey, we're behind a little bit, but do not worry. As we've talked about, Riley, the fact that we're still, 2-3 weeks away before we really start to get concerned about any hangups with planning. And also at the same time, we know that once it does dry out a little bit more, it's going to get a chance to get a big chunk of our planting done here in the state of Iowa.
You know how there's people who show up fashionably late and then people who have to show up like really early to everything? That's what we're doing right now, is we're just afraid that we're not really early to planting season when, we're going at a good pace. It is interesting that, it's April 28th, and just today is the first time that we've seen the Iowa soil temps across the entire state above 50 degrees. So we just haven't had the proper conditions to really get fully into planting season yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point, because until you have the conditions where you need them to be, you can't really worry about planting anyway. At a certain point, you just have to hand the keys to Mother Nature and say, hey, you know what? When we get the chance, we will get out in the field. But until then, we have to let Mother Nature run its course. And again, not any kind of a concern that we're behind last year, because last year, for example, it actually was a little bit, faster than normal. So no reason to worry right now, but we are a little bit behind last year's pace. And at the same time, it's good to see those numbers at least jump up a little bit yesterday, because that does mean that farmers have had a chance to get some things done in the field in the way of planting.
Yeah, actually, last year went super fast for planting, so I think we'll just see how things go. I will be curious to see how the weather later on this crop season impacts things, because, of course, you plant early, you usually avoid some of that bad weather for like the critical growing stages, but you never know. Every year's different. We'll go ahead and take a look at the opening markets. Joe Camp of Comstock joining Mark for the opening market discussion.
Joined today by Joe Camp of Comstock for the opening market discussion. Joe, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
A split trade here. We've got soybeans lower, soybean oil taking a bit of a breather here this morning. We're just looking at fresh highs for the oil product there, but some settling despite the still higher crude oil market. We've got crude oil futures just under $100 a barrel again. Of course, every market responding to the ongoing developments in the Middle East, but soybeans, the soy complex lower, while corn and wheat are higher. Corn tagging along with wheat pacing these gains this morning. We've got a reaction to the crop condition ratings out on Monday afternoon. 30% of the U.S. winter wheat crop rated good to excellent, 35% rated poor or very poor. And those numbers are more severe, more extreme when you split out the west versus east. The hard red winter wheat crop throughout the southern plains very much deteriorated in its condition scores after this persistent drought. Also, the effects of frost and freeze events here that have come at an untimely fashion for what is this developing crop under poor conditions, and that being a more bullish feature so far to start off this Tuesday.
Joe, we're a little bit behind pace here in central Iowa, in general, when it comes to the crop planning status. And it's still, though, at the same time, several weeks away, at least a couple weeks away before we have any concerns, isn't it?
That's right. And that is split out again, west versus east. We've got much better progress in the eastern Corn Belt. It's helped the U.S. average climb here to 25% through Sunday, and that being about a week ahead of what is normal. Again, on the whole, when you split out a state like Iowa, as you mentioned, they're a laggard. That conversation, Iowa and on throughout the upper west, Western Corn Belt, about how it stayed damper and cooler for longer in so many places. You could split that out even across the state, west versus east, and it was soggier in the east. We talk with farmers in the west that have accomplished quite a bit or even finished. So it's skewed to that extent, as it oftentimes is, but also, as you bring up, not an overly alarming feature for the market just yet to jump on. We're still wondering about these decisions that farmers are making with planting. We know that weather is that top factor that can lead to switching. For example, corn not going in and going into late soybeans. That doesn't seem to be at play here in a huge way. Instead, thinking more about the price incentives, the price spreads that have continued to mostly favor soybean plantings, and also on the basis of cost, and still that conversation about higher fertilizer costs tied to corn because of what we'd brought up with the energy market, and its a link to the Middle East and the ongoing war in Iran.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
Farm bill discussion is a big part of this ongoing week, as we will hear from Dustin Huffman later in the show, discussing all of the happenings in Congress this week as the farm bill really in focus, especially with G.T. Thompson trying to get things rolling on the House side. And Senator Chuck Grassley held his weekly ag conference call today, discussing that very same topic, the farm bill, and especially what's happening on the House side. Here's Senator Grassley with more.
I'm glad to see Chairman Thompson leading efforts in the House to advance a 5-year farm bill. I don't need to remind you, journalists of agriculture, that Republicans significantly updated the farm safety net in the Working Families Tax Cut Act of last summer. Corn at $4.10 and beans at $10, along with other grains and other support prices. But as we all know, more needs to be done to support the ag economy, and that includes tackling high price of fertilizer. And that reminds me that I was invited to some fertilizer news conference that the Secretary of Agriculture is having at 4:30 today, and I thank her for the invitation, but I won't be able to be there because of meetings on the Hill, and particularly because of the King speaking to the Congress. Anyway, tackling the high price of fertilizer has to be a priority. So along that line, I'm working with Leader Thune, Ag Committee Chairman Boozman, and separately Senators Marshall and Klobuchar on a package of bipartisan bills to address the fertilizer market. My bill is called the Fertilizer Research Act. My bill would shine a light on market factors driving fertilizer costs, as well as improve federal data and reporting. Leader Thun's bill is entitled the Fertilizer Transparency Act. That bill would give farmers better insight into the current marketplace by providing weekly reports on U.S. fertilizer manufacturers and wholesalers, trying to get something out there on a regular basis, just like we have daily reports on the price of corn and soybeans. And lastly, Senator Marshall and Klobuchar are leading bills to expand fertilizer production here in the United States and cut red tape for new fertilizer technology. Together, these bills will help give farmers a fair shake in fertilizer marketplace. My hope is that the Senate Ag Committee will take up these bills before Memorial Day, and I really appreciate Chairman Boozman's leadership and his commitment to ensuring a stable and affordable fertilizer supply for farmers. He's looking out for the family farmers of America.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
It's time now for a check of the latest statewide cash basis prices here on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. Taking a look at the cash grain prices from across the state with a good mix of elevators trading on the both July and May contracts. ADM in Burlington on the July contract, corn 8 under at $4.64, beans 30 under at $11.60. Cargill and Eddyville on the May contract, corn 10 under at $4.54. New Cooperative in Algona on the July contract, corn 43 under at $4.29, beans 75 under at $11.15. Ag State in Sheldon on the May contract, corn 20 under at $4.44, beans 70 under at $11.06. Ag State in Alta, May contract, corn 30 under at $4.34, beans 65 under at $11.11. Cargill and Cedar Rapids, May contract corn 7 under at $4.57, beans on July 30 under at $11.60. Five Star Cooperative in Nashua, May corn 26 under at $4.38, May beans 56 under at $11.20. Lincoln Way Energy in Nevada, July corn 27 under at $4.45. ADM in Des Moines, May beans 20 under at $11.56. New Cooperative in Red Oak on the July contract, corn 37 under at $4.35, beans 75 under at $11.15. Mid-Iowa Cooperative in Green Mountain, May contract, corn 43 under at $4.21, beans 70 under at $11.06. New Cooperative in Sheraton on the July contract, corn 37 under at $4.35, beans 75 under at $11.15. Walk-On Feed Ranch on the May contract, corn 42 under at $4.22, beans 60 under at $11.16. New Cooperative in Glidden on the July contract, corn 41 under at $4.31, beans 75 under at $11.15. That's been a check of the Iowa basis prices. You're listening to the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. I'm Riley Smith.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
Well, as we know, Dustin is out in Washington, D.C. for Washington Watch, and he's visiting with the top decision makers in the ag industry. He's visiting now with the Renewable Fuels Association to discuss the latest E15 situation.
Talking with Jared Mullendore of Renewable Fuels Association. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes to talk with us here today.
Thanks for having me. We got a big week in Washington, and we're happy to have you out here.
That we do have a big week. Farm Bill is supposed to hit the House floor this week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the E15 legislation that we've been waiting for finally attached on there as well. What are you hearing from around here, the pulse of DC, about what that's going to mean for us going forward?
Well, that's the whole thing. Is it going to hit as an amendment? Is it going to be in the base text? If it is an amendment, is it going to be challenged based on CBO scoring or whatever else? Really, it's just a lot of work on our champions' part. Like we've got a lot of really devoted members of Congress who are working on this thing, and as we go into, here we are on the beginning of the week, and we are crossing our fingers and giving them all of the backup we can to make sure that all the chances for an E15 viable path to passage, and I mean viable path not to House passage, I mean viable path to signature on the president's desk, is on the table.
And of course, we've been waiting for a while. We were told over the last couple of years it wasn't big enough to go on as a standalone bill to get the recognition. It's had headwinds from the oil state representatives. I mean, we know that the House maybe has a better chance than the Senate, but what do we think? Do we think that if it gets in there, there's going to be without too much challenge on a bipartisan standpoint?
You know, everybody wants something, and we had a product back in January that was what we thought was kind of maximum consensus. Mm-hmm. And if other small refiners or mid-sized refiners want to come along and, look for something else, we're all ears, right? But meanwhile, we've got a good product. We feel like there is a common sense solution that is already on the table, and we're going to push forward toward that. And I think a lot of people in Congress are going to do the same.
And of course, this has always been, it's not a mandate that people have to use E15, it's just to make it available for the consumers to have.
Absolutely. This was never a mandate. This was never a you must. This was just allowing retailers to do what they can do, right? And it's been the status quo for the last 4 or 5 years. And those retailers will be able to, if this legislation passes, they will be able to adopt that technology. They will be able to install those pumps and really unlock this potential. When we survey our retailers and ask them why, if they haven't adopted E15, they say because of regulatory and uncertainty. So give them the certainty, and they'll take care of it.
And of course, there's also, we don't need a waiver then every year from the president. We don't have to worry about, are we going to be able to have it for the summer months? I mean, and of course, this whole thing started because of vapor regulations, I believe, in the Clean Air Act, correct?
Right. The waivers are coming out of a fairly ridiculous regulation, because E15 has a lower read vapor pressure than E10 does. It just E10 gets a waiver and E15 does not. So what we're talking about is just parity for E15, which is already a product that is approved to be used in all vehicles post 2001. And all we have to do is say to those retailers, you're going to be able to do that next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And that's when you see them make the investments. And we think that leads to a lot more blend. We think that leads to a lot more corn grind. And that's really our target, right?
Right.
Because we're the ethanol producers, and we want to make ethanol, but we also want to have market for ethanol. And market for ethanol means market for corn. And the thing I like to talk about is we talk about E15. That's great. If you could go straight to E15, you're not going straight to E15. Like, retailers are retailers and state markets are state markets. But think if you went to E11. Think if you went from E10 to E11. That would be 500 million bushels of corn and 500 million or 1.5 billion gallons of ethanol. So, like, when you're looking at corn prices where they are, that kind of demand is pretty huge, even at E11. And then you talk 12, 13, 14. We're just trying to get retailers in a position where they have the stability to move forward and make their plans.
And of course, we talked about it brings certainty to the retailers, it brings certainty for farmers to have a market for that corn, but it also brings some certainty to the consumers themselves, because we've seen good numbers if it's offered that people are using it.
Oh, sure. I mean, people have seen that any efficiency loss is very, very marginal, like 1 or 2%. I mean, it's not worth worrying about. And then you have the cost savings, which is worth worrying about, which is in the 20, 30%, 10, 20% range. And as we see those things out in the marketplace and consumers wanting it, we know it's the status quo under this administration, but getting it to where it's permanent really leads to that retailer adoption, and that's where you see the consumer benefit.
All right, well, we're hoping that we get good news, and hopefully the Senate will be able to adopt something else and get it to the president, and hopefully we finally get this monkey off our back along with the Farm Bill.
It's going to be a big week.
All right, well, Jared at Mullendore here with the Renewable Fuels Association, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your local radio station brings you the pulse of your community. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network adds specialized ag content to help farmers make informed decisions. From county fairs to national ag news, we're here to tell the story of agriculture to everyone who needs to hear it. Together, we deliver a blend of local community and ag industry-focused information that rural Iowa relies on every day. This message from your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson. Joined in midday by Brandon Doherty of Total Farm Marketing. Brandon, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Yeah, so we're seeing mostly green here, led by wheat. Wheat up double digits here. In fact, over 20 cents higher in both Chicago and Kansas City. That seems to be tied to crop conditions remaining relatively low. Winter wheat crop ratings did hold at 30% good to excellent on yesterday's afternoon report. However, the poor to very poor category was up 2%. So that kind of continues to show that those hard red winter wheat areas are struggling. And I think that is what is largely leading to the upswing in price, in addition to the fact that the Strait of Hormuz remains closed with no peace talks currently scheduled.
And so, Brandon, as you look at what we saw yesterday in the ag marketplace, followed up by today, what do you think is kind of the main story that we should be taking away from the price movement we've seen so far this week?
Yeah, so again, I think the weather is starting to play more of an important factor in the markets. Traders, I think, are paying attention to that. Soybeans are actually down just a little bit this morning. I think that is likely due to the planting pace. Is 23% complete versus 17% a year ago, and a 5-year average of only 12%. I believe that is actually a record pace this year. So that may be contributing to a little bit of the lower soybean trade here. But again, a lot of that has to do with weather. And I think that's kind of going to be the main story going forward, unless we see any other big geopolitical risks or stories come out.
What's happening on the other side of the trade with the livestock?
Kind of both sides are neutral here on the livestock complex as a whole. However, cattle are higher in both lives and feeders. Hogs are down just a little bit. I think that the cattle market is kind of continuing to push higher here. We had strong box beef prices last week and again on Monday, so that's supportive. and I think we're seeing buying interest as some optimism has returned to the market. Demand seems to remain relatively strong, though I can't help but feel we're still on that threshold where consumer demand may start to wane here as we remain at these higher prices.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
The best way is to call us at 800-334-9779.
Brandon Doherty, Total Farm Marketing, my guest here at Midday. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you much.
Start your trading day the right way with Market Matters, the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network's first look at the grain markets. Every morning, we bring you the numbers from the overnight session, plus a quick snapshot of the macro economy and what's driving market moves. Need to know what's coming next? Market Matters gives you a daily preview of market-moving news and reports so you're ready for the trading day ahead. And don't miss our daily livestock market outlook. Get the analyst predictions before the markets open. Get the edge you need. Tune into Market Matters every weekday morning, only on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
May corn up 3 1/4 at $4.64. May soybeans down 3 1/2 at $11.73 3/4. May soybean meal down 20 cents at $3.3360. May soybean oil up 47 cents at $72.73. On the Merc, June live cattle up $3.25 at $252.20. May feeder cattle up $1.73 at $369.18. May lean hogs down 18 cents at $94.20. That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters. Riley Smith on the show today, filling in for Dustin Huffman as he is out in Washington, D.C. Mark Magnuson on the show as always as well. And we're going back to the market conversation as Mark picks up with Joe Camp of Comstock for the livestock conversation.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade?
We've got a split trade here for live cattle futures moderately higher and feeder cattle a touch lower. It's been a rebound here these past handful of sessions that's coming off of a stretch where the market corrected lower. We had new all-time highs for live cattle. The June contract reached up to 252 exactly. And then we had 6 days straight of a sell-off. Finally, last week, a bounce and some restored confidence on the part of the bulls that we're back to trading the supply side fundamentals that we know remain awfully tight. On the other side of it, optimism about improving demand with this point of the season kicking off with warmer temperatures and really a resilient beef consumer across the U.S. even after those higher prices that were put into the grocery store starting late last year and still sticking around. So part of the conversation still is about what we're going to see in the screwworm headlines. More of those cases popping up last week to further delay these expectations about reopening the border with Mexico. And beyond that, you don't have a huge direct impact on the hogs. They're just a touch lower after being a touch higher to start the week.
Joe Camp of Comstock, my guest here today. Head to Comstock.com for more marketing information and resources. Joe, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Same to you.
Stay up to date with the latest in the ag industry with Agribusiness Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Each weekday, we bring you the latest advancements in farming, from new precision ag technology to cutting-edge sustainable farming practices. Agribusiness Matters is also your source for the most relevant ag news, policy discussions, and insights that are shaping the future of agriculture. Tune in to Agribusiness Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, you need reliable information. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network brings you ag-specific content like market trends, weather outlooks, and policy updates that matter to your operation, while your local station brings you community news and consistent updates on what is happening in your area. It's a partnership built for the challenges of rural life. Your farm, your local station, and your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters. This is the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Mark and Riley with you here today on the show. And the United States beef industry always looking to find ways to build that demand, whether it's here domestically or overseas. And the United Kingdom now engaged in a new trade deal with the United States for U.S. beef. Here's Riley Smith with more.
When the United Kingdom departed from the European Union in 2020, U.S. beef no longer had duty-free access to the U.K. This increased costs for British importers and the entire U.S. beef supply chain, making the U.K. market more difficult to serve. Now, duty-free shipments of U.S. beef are being sent to the United Kingdom for the first time in over 5 years, following implementation of a new trade framework. The UK has created a 13,000 metric ton duty-free quota for U.S. beef, with the first products arriving last month. U.S. Meat Export Federation President and CEO Dan Halstrom said this is an opportunity to add more value and volume for U.S. beef producers.
In 2020, when the UK left the EU under Brexit, it really provided a real challenging dilemma for the UK trade, because they're then having to pay an incremental duty to come in from the US. We were at a disadvantage without a doubt. Granted, high-quality US beef carries a great reputation and does demand a premium, but this is a premium that should go in our producers' pockets. So this is really a landmark agreement to carve out 13,000 metric tons at zero duty quota for U.S. beef. You look at what our values were into the UK in 2024 and 5, we were $30 to $40 million. This could easily be $150 to $200 million once it gets implemented and going.
Halstrom said 2 events in London this week, a Wednesday reception and dinner at the U.S. Embassy and a Thursday trade dinner at the Smith & Wollensky Steakhouse, will showcase the unique attributes of U.S. beef to importers, distributors, and other key contacts in the British food service and retail sectors.
While the Wednesday event is really a milestone in terms of celebrating at the high levels of government, we are planning a second event on Thursday night, which will be a broader swath of the trade. And we're holding this event at Smith & Wollensky, one of the renowned steakhouses in the U.S., and they do have several locations outside the U.S., including in London. So this will be our chance to showcase U.S. beef at its finest, because food service really is our mainstay, right? Food service is where the reputation just is at its best. It's also the introduction to a lot of consumers with the ultimate goal that we can then expand further into retail.
With support from the USDA, the Beef Checkoff Program, and state beef councils from Nebraska, South Dakota, and Texas, Halstrom said these events will mark a new beginning for U.S. beef across the pond.
This will provide an opportunity not only to grow the volume with existing trade, but maybe to recapture some of that trade that was lost over the last 6 years.
For more information, visit usmef.org. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Riley Smith.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
Well, Riley, looking at some of the data from USDA's Tenure, Ownership, and Transition of Agricultural Land Survey, it's known as TOTAL, found about 348 million acres of agricultural land are rented for uses including cropland and pasture. The figures exclude federally owned public grazing land. The Plains region, including North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, and Texas, accounts for about 43% of all rented farmland. Also thought it was interesting, in the Midwest, nearly 800,000 absentee landowners own farmland but do not actively farm it. Those owners represent about 38% of U.S. landlords while controlling 21% of agricultural acres. So we know that farmland, of course, is oftentimes rented in those instances. It's just kind of interesting to hear those numbers laid out.
I think interesting to hear as well how much farmland is owned but not farmed. That was a much bigger chunk of the total than I thought it would be. And you think about that, that's right at a fifth of the farmland that's not being farmed, and we're still increasing our production every year. I think that's a big testament to the ever-evolving ag industry and the proficiency of farmers to continue to push that to even higher heights. We'll wrap up the show here next.
At the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, we deliver ag-focused content designed to complement your local radio station. From market updates to the latest ag news, our trusted farm broadcasters bring you the information you need while your local station keeps you connected to the heart of your community. And just like your local station, our broadcast team is Iowa-based, so we have feet on the ground across the state. Together, we're stronger for Iowa's farmers. This message from your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Iowa Ag Matters. Mark and Riley on the show here today. Dustin continuing his trip in Washington, D.C. We'll have more coverage for us on the show tomorrow. Thanks for listening. You can find us online anytime at iowaagnet.com. You're listening to the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.